Sup guys? So how do I time my airstrikes, battleship salvos, torpedoes, and so on? This is a hotly requested topic that I'm finally going to spill the beans on. And the truth is, there is no secret. It's pure trial and error. I don't do any kind of cooldown calculation. Maybe some people do, but what I'm going to share with you is the way I do it. It's simple in some ways, but might take more time. First, you must have a reason to want to adjust your timing. This reason could be something like hitting a certain amount of damage in a given time frame, or increasing the consistency of a certain battle. If you have no issues with your fleet doing the content that you're doing, then don't worry about timing. It's more trouble than it's worth. Okay, let's get started. Here is a perfectly good loadout on Shinano. If you don't know what these equipment are, or why they're good, then you're not ready for this discussion and should first watch the in-depth guides linked in the description. Let's say I do a battle with this loadout, and I don't get the result I want. I'm like 10 bars short of one-shotting a boss or something. In the next attempt, I'll watch the battle and see what the issue is. Here are some things that I might look for. In meta fights with a loadout like this, it might be the case that she is 3 or 4 seconds away from the next airstrike at the end of the battle. As a result, I might change some of her planes for faster ones. Faster planes tend to deal less damage to compensate. This new setup is not guaranteed to be fast enough to squeeze out another airstrike, in which case I will continue swapping planes out for faster and faster planes until it is fast enough. Also, just getting 4 strikes alone doesn't always mean the total damage will be greater than 3 strikes, depending on how much damage you're losing out on with the planes it takes to get 4 strikes. If you need to use a Fairy Fulmar and 2 Fairy Alpacores for some reason, it doesn't matter if you get 8 strikes, you'll still deal less damage than using 3 strikes. Please try not to overcook. The same thing applies for battleships and torpedoes. If you can give up just a bit of damage for an entire extra attack before the end of the battle, it's probably worth trying. Another thing to pay attention to is the movement pattern of the enemy. Let's say that the boss stops moving from 18 seconds until 21 seconds into the fight, and starts moving at 22 seconds, which is when your airstrike arrives and completely whiffs. It's probably going to be a good idea to swap out some of your planes for faster ones to strike when it's not moving and land everything. It could also stop moving 24 seconds in too, in which case you want to use slower planes to match the timing. Not rocket science. Instead of using slower planes though, you could also reduce the fleet tech reload bonus, but that's a bit inconvenient in my opinion. Up to you how you want to do it. Also, changing the timing of your first airstrike to match the stop timing might make you miss another one later in the fight, so keep that in mind as well. There's no one single solution that will work for every fight that ever comes out. There are other fight-specific mechanics that you might want to time your airstrikes for. Maybe to use the screen clear property of the airstrikes to save your vanguard from an attack, or to intercept incoming planes if it's feasible. Okay, apart from timing your airstrike to the fight, there is also timing it to certain buffs and debuffs. For example, Helena's radar scan is a powerful debuff which activates every 20 seconds and lasts for 10 seconds, shifted forward by 4 seconds if you use the SG radar. And you obviously want most of your damage to fall within the window when the debuff is active. If you're using effects like Implacable's Root and Bismarck Sway's Black Hole, you're also going to want your damage to go off as close to the effect as possible. And the way to do this is the exact same as before. Just look at the battle, and if your attacks are too slow for the window of the buff or debuff, make them faster, and if they're too fast, make them slower. Keep trying until it works. In the Rodney meta battle, there was a mechanic that prevented you from having your main fleet attacks be too close to one another. However, you still wanted them to be as close as possible without triggering the mechanic, so it took a lot of fine-tuning in order to arrive at a good timing. I hope you can see why there's no one-size-fits-all solution. The last place where you're going to want to time your attacks is in campaign. Here, you want to spread your attacks out evenly so that you're constantly progressing through the waves of enemies rather than wasting your attacks by having them all go off at once and overkilling the few ships on the screen before doing nothing for 20 seconds. Again, if the cooldown of 2 ships are too close together, make one faster and the other one slower with the same method as before until they're sufficiently far enough apart in cooldown. That's all there is to it. Aside from faster planes and guns, there are auxiliaries like the high-performance fire control radar and autoloader for battleships, and then the homing beacon and maintenance manju for carriers that can help with the timing. Do note that all of these result in a flat damage loss, with the exception of the fire control radar in some cases, and it's only useful when the different timing you get significantly improves the result in the pursuit of your goal. Something else to keep in mind is the number of planes of each slot for carriers. Shinano has 2 planes in the first slot and 4 in the last slot. It's hard to see this in game, so check the wiki for this information. This means that the first slot with only 2 planes has less of an impact on the total cooldown over airstrike compared to the third slot. Watch what happens to the cooldown when I replace the Ju-87 in the first slot with the Sayun. Then, watch the difference when I replace the third slot with a Sayun. The impact is greater on the third slot, which has more planes. While the airstrike is faster if you use a Sayun on the third slot, it also becomes weaker because more of the planes are the weaker Sayun. So, as is the case with everything else that I've talked about so far, it's all a matter of trade-offs. Also, you should try to use the least effective plane slot to adjust cooldown based on the type of content you're doing. For a solo boss fight, dive bombers are the worst, so try to gimp your dive bomber slot to decrease your airstrike cooldown before touching the rocket fighters or torpedo bombers. Battleships and vanguards only have their main guns to worry about, so they're more straightforward. Anyways, that's it for this video. Hope you find the information helpful. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next one.